Every single day, millions of people stand just outside a door, a boardroom, an interview, a high-stakes negotiation, a room full of critics, and right before they turn that handle, their stomach drops and their hands shake. Why? Because they are playing a losing game. They are walking into that room asking themselves the wrong question. Will they like me? Am I good enough for them? Stop right there. The exact second you ask that question, you have already handed over your power. You have lost before your foot even crosses the threshold. Time is ticking, and every single time you change who you are just to fit into their space, a piece of your true potential dies. You are not going in there to beg for a seat at their table. Before you walk through their door, you must anchor yourself in one undeniable truth. We routinely walk into high-stakes rooms desperate for approval, hoping someone will look at us and say we are good enough. The moment we seek validation from the people behind that door, we hand over our power and allow them to dictate our worth. True strength requires an entirely different perspective, where you enter a room not to be accepted, but to evaluate. It is a fundamental shift from asking, will they select me, to deciding if their mission, values, and vision align with what you bring to the table. You are the one conducting the interview. Value never flows from the room into the individual. It flows from the individual into the room. When a person stands before a threshold, the environment inside has no inherent power to dictate who he is. It is a profound mistake to assume that a corporate title or a prestigious panel holds a monopoly on importance. The environment is entirely defined by the standard an individual carries within himself before crossing the threshold. Instead of walking and hoping to absorb the significance of the space, he enters to inject his own clarity, purpose, and unshakable presence. Winning access to an elite space means absolutely nothing if an individual has to dilute his core principles just to fit through the frame. When a person suppresses his convictions or alters his foundational beliefs simply to gain acceptance, the resulting victory is entirely hollow. An individual who trades his integrity for entry quickly realizes he has not unlocked a gateway to long-term growth, but rather walked into a prison of endless expectations. True fulfillment and authentic power cannot survive in an environment where one must constantly perform a character just to maintain a seat at the table. An individual's ultimate impact is determined by the intent he brings to the threshold, not the rewards he hopes to extract from the room. When a person enters a space purely focused on acquisition, seeking a title, a paycheck, or status, he immediately adopts a posture of scarcity and dependence. Shifting one's entire perspective toward contribution fundamentally changes the dynamic of the encounter from a transactional demand to an active leadership. He must cross that line, thinking exclusively about how his unique vision, unyielding focus, and clarity of purpose can solve their deepest problems and elevate their mission. Internal clarity must always precede external communication if an individual wishes to command the space he enters. Long before a person ever speaks a word in a high-stakes room, he is bombarded by the deafening roar of external expectations, past failures, and the opinions of the crowd outside. If he carries that chaotic noise across the threshold, his voice will merely echo the fears and desires of others rather than projecting his own deep-seated truth. Achieving an unshakable inner stillness is the essential discipline that separates frantic reaction from true, purposeful leadership. An individual must deliberately pause at the threshold to tune out the external chatter and reconnect with his core conviction, the foundational reason he chose to stand before that door. By quieting the pressure before turning the handle, he ensures that when he finally speaks, his words carry the weight of authentic clarity. Sacrificing who you are at the foundational level just to secure a temporary nod of approval is the ultimate betrayal of an individual's future potential. When a person stands outside a door, the pressure to reshape his narrative or soften his edge for immediate validation can feel overwhelming. The desire to belong often drives people to wear a mask that pleases the room. But an individual must realize that a temporary contract built on a false persona requires an unsustainable lifetime of maintenance. He trades his infinite worth for a finite moment of comfort, deleting the traits that make him valuable. Maintaining an unshakable allegiance to one's core identity is what transforms a temporary visitor into an enduring force. An individual who knows exactly who he is, what he stands for, and why he has arrived at that threshold refuses to negotiate away his foundational truths. He recognizes that if a room demands he abandon his long-term vision just to cross the baseline, then that room is fundamentally unworthy of his presence. Walking through that door with his integrity intact allows him to play the long game. He understands that temporary rejection is a small price to pay for preserving the absolute clarity of his character.